I already started at a really young age being hyper aware of what everybody around me was feeling. I think I can remember I was like 8 or 9, and they started saying that I have to harden up because the world is a harsh
Oh
place.
my
And it
gosh.
started at a very young age.
It was the teenage years that for me, I really started to notice that I felt like things were affecting me so much more than my
Yeah.
peers, really struggling to kind of navigate the emotional world of being a teenager. And for me, it was just like
Yes.
all encompassing. It was like I couldn't get out of this emotional roller coaster, you know?
No, no.
Highly sensitive friends since 2018. We've been sharing our journeys together.
And now we're bringing you along for the ride,
Welcome to Highly Sensitive Friends Talking,
where we chat about all things HSP, from daily life scenarios
to exploring spirituality, personal growth.
and all the aha moments in between.
So grab a cozy drink and settle in.
Because this is your space to feel seen, heard, and inspired.
Let's spend some time together.
Okay, hello everybody.
Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
to the next episode of our podcast. So we decided today to talk about something that I think a lot of HSPs will relate to, and just kind of our experiences as kids and as teenagers, as highly sensitive people, the struggles we went through, and maybe the strengths that we had as highly sensitive people and that time of our life looking back. That's our prompt, and we're just going to go with it.
Yes, it's a very interesting prompt to start the conversation with, because I can imagine that a lot of highly sensitive people struggle with their youth, whether it is as a child or as a teenager.
I think that, the trait has only recently been in the circulation of people's awareness for what, maybe 20 years or something ish.
Yes,
I
I
know
think
the
so.
research was starting like in the 90s when we were kids, but for the most part, most of our listeners, unless you are currently a teenager, probably if you're an HSP, did not know about the trait when you were a kid, right? Back then, when we were going through all of these younger experiences and we were maybe feeling different than the other people around us and thinking things like, what's wrong with me? Or why am I so sensitive or whatever? We didn't have that ability to say like, oh, it's because I'm a highly sensitive person and everything's fine. So I think that there are probably a lot of adult HSPs out there who have had a similar experience. So going through their younger adolescent years, feeling certain things and not feeling like there was a community that they could share that to feel that validation that they are understood and seen. And so I thought this would be a fun topic for us to talk about, because I think it can be kind of cathartic to go back, share these experiences and feel like we weren't alone, even though we felt maybe that we were alone during that time, that there was a lot of other people out there having similar experiences.
True. Yeah, because how old were you when you discovered that you're a highly sensitive person?
I think I was 27. I always do the math and do it wrong. So, but I think it was around like, late 20s. So,
Yeah, yeah. I just imagine how many years you've been going through life not knowing that you're a highly sensitive person, and just asking yourself, what is wrong with me? Because you just didn't fit in anywhere. And then the big revelation that you're a highly sensitive person. I think it's just
right.
the biggest aha moment many of us have in our life.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely remember when, especially in high school, starting to notice differences. Like I think when I was a little kid,
Mm.
I think when you're really little, you're not really thinking about what other people are thinking of you or comparing yourself to others. You're just here to have a good time, right?
Oh, yeah,
And then when
yeah.
you become like 14, 15, I feel like is when you start, when most of us enter high school, right? That's the time I think we really start noticing other people and how they're perceiving us and how we perceive them and how we're different and how we measure up and all of this social stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, it wasn't, I already started at a really young age being hyper aware of what everybody around me was feeling and
Oh,
tuning into
interesting.
them. And my parents, I think I can remember I was like 8 or 9, and they started saying that I have to harden up because the world is a harsh
Oh
place.
my
And it
gosh.
started at a very young age, and I understand my parents wanted to protect me.
Yeah,
But I can remember that that message went back very long, that they were always like, you are
interesting.
very sweet. You have to be careful. The world is a harsh place. You have to toughen up. And yeah, I think it started for me much earlier than my teens, actually, that I realized, I care a lot about what other people think. And I care a lot about everyone.
Yeah, you know
But
what?
for
It's
you,
funny
it
because
started in the teens.
well, because I was gonna say when I came up with this topic for this podcast, I had a gut feeling that I would be the one talking about the teenage years and you'd be the one talking about the childhood years. Because it does
Yes.
it because I know you've had experiences you share with me with that teacher you had that was really hard on you. Like there were some formative experiences I think that maybe made you aware of your
Yes.
sensitivity at a younger age. It was the teenage years that for me I really started to notice that the way that I felt things was stronger than most of my peers. Like, I could tell my emotional reactions to things were so much more intense than other
Yeah.
people, where my peers would be like, what's no big deal? Like, just get over it or something. And I'd be like, how can you?
Yeah.
This is so deeply affecting me. What do you mean? Just get over it. You know,
And
like
in
that's
what type of situations?
all kinds of social things like dealing with drama with friends or dating or something. I think those types of, or even workload or just the stress of everything. I don't know. I just feel like I started to notice that I felt like things were affecting me so much more than my peers,
Yeah.
but they were just able to brush it off or just go on to the next thing and not be stuck in this processing period or really struggling to kind of navigate the emotional world of being a teenager. And for me, it was just like
Yes.
all encompassing. It was like I couldn't get out of this emotional roller coaster, you know?
No, no, I know it was just really
Interesting.
tough. But you didn't know at all throughout your entire teens that you're a highly sensitive person.
Yeah,
So
no.
you went through your teens just thinking something's wrong with me.
Well, that was the case for you too, right? Because you didn't know until you were at 20
Yes,
something.
I learned about the trait when I was 22 years old. So that was still very young, I feel.
Oh, okay.
At the beginning of my 20s, and I learned it in therapy. I think most HSPs do learn it in therapy, actually, when you start
Actually,
like going
I think
therapy.
I might have been like 25. I honestly don't remember, but yeah, but I know you're a year or two younger than me, so that because I think you found
Yeah.
about it a year or so before I did, so I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Before that, I just always thought, okay, I am just built near the water. I always had like with the waterworks coming, you know.
That's funny. I like that.
Yes,
So you
yeah.
found out from
It's the
a
same.
therapy appointment?
Yes, I found that
Oh,
in therapy
how have we
because
never talked about this?
I don't know why.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I
tell
went
me.
to therapy to work through some stuff after a tough breakup. And quite soon in therapy, my therapist mentioned that I might want to look into the HSP trait because she thinks I might be a highly sensitive person. And
Wow.
I opened some articles and then I read the book from Elaine Aron, and it was just this big, oh, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
suddenly everything fell into place.
I had a very similar experience, except for the way that I found out about it was through a YouTube
Mm.
video. I
Oh,
was just
wow.
scrolling YouTube one day and there was a video that was the true power of sensitivity. It was some like TED Talk or something.
Oh,
And
yes.
and even now, like all the hairs are standing up. I was like, I have to watch this video. This so speaks to me, whatever this video is
Yes.
about. It was like someone ripped open the sky and all of this stuff came pouring out. I was so fixated and I had to learn everything. And it
Yes.
did feel like all of a sudden all of my life experiences made sense.
Yes. But also, I know that your mom is a child book author and she
Yeah.
wrote about highly sensitive children. Did she find out at the same time that
She
you did
found out
find out
through
about the
me,
trait?
but I mean, she also, like I think you were describing as a kid, had that awareness of feeling other people's emotions and being very, because she had this idea to write this story about this young, sensitive girl since she was like 10 years old or something.
Yeah.
So I think she
Wow.
was like you, where she already had that awareness of, like, I feel more sensitive than I'm feeling different than other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I love the term, that you're just a bit softer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and being soft is not a bad thing. It's just,
Yeah, it can actually be a really good thing,
yeah.
depending on the
Yeah.
situation, right? I think sometimes being less sensitive is good and sometimes being more sensitive is good. And I think that's why, my theory at least, why there's HSPs and non-HSPs, because there's
Yes.
different strengths and benefits to
Yes.
being sensitive or not, and I think we're
I agree.
intended by the universe or God or whatever, biology, to be able to support each other,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a reason why only 15 to 20% of the population are highly sensitive and that the rest are non-HSPs. Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier sometime in one of our conversations that we are
Yeah.
just like
I actually have like several
the
videos about it
signal. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
my channel too, because I just feel so strongly that there has to be a reason, right?
Yeah, we're just the sensors of society identifying whether something is wrong and or not working. And we're just signaling it very early on. And it's
Right.
really a power. But sometimes when there's a lot of things that are wrong, it can just be really exhausting to have that
Right.
trait.
I mean, I kind of think of like the canary in the coal mine thing. I don't know if you know about what that concept or whatever, but it's
No.
basically, I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly, but I guess they used to put canaries in coal mines so that if there was like a gas leak or something, the canary would die or something and would show everybody that there was a problem. They needed to evacuate
Oh,
the cave or whatever it was. I know it's really sad,
yeah.
but I think about that. Where the indicators that something is going on that everybody needs to know about. We're like the first responders or whatever, like we need those
Yeah.
types of people.
Yeah. I think knowing this when you're in your teens or when you're a child can be so empowering, but we grew
Right.
up not having that. So it's kind
Exactly.
of at an adult age, you need to learn to see your sensitivity as a strength. And it's quite challenging, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I wish, especially the course that I made, I often think if I had had this when I was 14, oh my gosh, my life would have been just
Yes,
totally different trajectory in such a better way. Not that I'm bitter about the trajectory I'm on or anything like that, but I know that all of this information would have been so useful to me
I
back
agree.
then. And we may have talked about this at one point about our high school experiences, but where I went to school, there was like 2,000 kids
Yes,
and
that's a lot.
is oh my gosh. So and it was a 4-story building and it just felt like there was so much social stimuli all the time. I couldn't escape it. And then I did after school activities. I was in the theater program. After this long day of classes and navigating this sea of all of these kids with all their emotional stuff going on that I'm absorbing and walking through the hallways
Yes.
and like and then I would go to, do my thing after school and then I would get home and then it was dinner time and then 4 hours of homework. And then, I'd go to bed at like midnight and like wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but it would take me hours to fall asleep. And
Oh
now
my
it kind of makes
gosh.
sense to me because I was laying there processing all of this stuff that I didn't have time to stop and process during the day. So that's why it would
Yes.
take me so long. It's like the busy schedules, the sea of 2,000 kids with all of their stuff that I was picking up on and absorbing and not having any awareness that that's what was happening. Oh
Yes.
my God, it's just like exhausting. Like even talking
Sorry,
about
I just have to laugh because this whole story reminds me of my college introduction week, you know.
Oh,
just
yeah.
I wasn't aware of my HSP trait back then, and we had this 1 week of introductory activities where you were just doing stuff from
Oh,
morning till
yeah.
evening, going out at night, and then sleep a few hours, and next day the same program would go on. And it was supposed to last 5 days, and I went home after day two. Because I just
Yeah.
was not able to deal with all the activities, so many new people,
Yeah.
never a moment for yourself.
Right.
At night, we were sleeping, not like in rooms, but we were sleeping in this big gym, and there were like hundreds of people sleeping in one space,
No way.
and they woke us up in the morning with really loud music, and it was just the most HSP unfriendly environment to
Yeah.
be in. And after day two, I was just like drained to the max. So I went home and I felt really bad because I wanted to get to know everyone, but at the same time, they wouldn't have gotten to know me how I am as a person if I was
Yeah.
totally overstimulated. What you're saying is like, it reminds me so much of that experience.
Yeah. I mean, well, that for me it was 4 years straight, but we didn't have to sleep in a big space together. Like
No,
that would have been
you
so
could like
bad.
decompress.
But you bring up a good point too that I've thought about before. Some of the things that I think suck sometimes about being an HSP when you don't have these tools and resources to kind of manage the stimulation is that you end up showing up in social situations in a way that's not who you really are. You're
Yes.
showing up as this stressed, drained, irritable version of you, which sucks because you want people to get to know your authentic self and not the stress response version of you. But it's hard if the environment is causing you to feel this way, and then other people don't
Yes.
understand why it's sort of different for you, why it's more challenging for your nervous system to handle these things. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
judging
Here she
you
goes
for being,
again.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, but that's also too, I think, part of why I'm hoping our podcast is super helpful to people, because I think what so many of us seem to need is to feel seen,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
for me, realizing that a lot of these quote unquote negative aspects of being a highly sensitive person are actually our nervous system being stressed really helped me, because it helped me stop attributing the quote unquote negative things as part of my personality. It's no, this is just my nervous system reacting in a very normal way to being overstimulated. And when that calms
Exactly.
down, when I can support myself, then all of those things diminish in our experience.
Yeah.
But I wish other people knew that,
Yes. Yes. It's so hard. But I
someday.
think I feel like it becomes easier as we grow up, and we have a more smaller environment because we usually have our work, our
Yeah.
coworkers. At home, we have our family, we have a selection of friends that we see. So it's less overwhelming when you become an adult. But as a teenager in a high school environment or in school with a lot of loud kids around you, it's just not HSP friendly. And
Yeah.
especially back in our days when they didn't know about the HSP trait, you just had to fit in,
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the struggles as well. And I think something I do want to touch on is what I feel like some of our strengths were as highly sensitive kids and teenagers. Because the one
Yes.
thing that I do know for sure had to do with my trait is I felt like I had really strong friendships. And I knew that I
Yes.
was a friend that most of my friends felt comfortable talking to. And I definitely think that that's because of, a higher degree of empathy. And I was always good at noticing when people were upset. If we were in a social situation, like at a party or something, and one of my friends was like kind of sitting off to the side and had a facial expression like they weren't having a good time, I would be the one that would
Yeah.
notice and go over. And they'd be like, oh, how do you always know when I'm feeling upset? It's like, I can pick up on these things,
Yeah.
So I do feel like I
Yeah.
had really strong, really deep, meaningful friendships in high school, which was like the
Yeah.
saving grace.
Yeah. I think for me, I still have a friend from high school that I still am connected with, and we still have a deep friendship. But for me, it was really hard to connect deeply with the people that I went to high school with, simply because I lived in Norway, and in Norway, people are a bit more careful
Reserved.
with reserved, maybe.
Yeah.
Reserved is a good word. And I was able to get along with everyone in class. So that was nice. There were still groups and I could get along with everyone.
Yeah.
But the depth that I was seeking in friendships was not always reciprocated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was a bit different, but thankfully in adult age, that has changed for me. So now I have really nice friendships and very deep friendships. And it's just something that you find as you grow up, I guess, if you don't have it in high school. But I'm happy to hear that you had a different experience because, it can look so different from person to person,
Yeah. So are there anything that you can reflect on and find some strengths that you had as a highly sensitive kid that helps you?
Well, I don't know. That's quite a confronting question, actually, because as I mentioned, I was always told that I needed to toughen up. So for me, like my sensitivity, for a long time, I saw it as a weakness. So now at an adult age, I see all the strengths that I have with the trait. But back then, I would find it really hard to recall a situation where my sensitivity was a strength because I was just hiding it, and I think a lot of highly sensitive people have had that experience as well. I hope not, but I think that is the case. It's really hard to answer that question, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to have, it's okay if you don't. I think you're right. I think a lot of us, especially when you're hyper aware of the fact that you are sensitive and you're being told from your environment that it's a negative thing, it would be really hard to feel like it's a positive.
Yeah, at least back then, as a child and as a teenager, looking back at that time in my life, I find it really hard to see the strengths because I was hiding it away so much. I think maybe now that I think more about it, maybe the music.
I was literally just gonna say, I'm like, what about your music? That's so funny.
Yes, because I used music as a way to process my feelings, and I still do, but now not as intensively as I used to do in my teenage years. But I think my sensitivity really was a strength in creating lyrics and translating them into music. And when I sing, I was able to really get out that feeling that I felt within. I could easily translate that into music. Express it. So I think that was a big strength in terms of creativity and also in terms of art, because I didn't have to hide that part. Art is always seen very positively.
Right. I know a lot of musicians that use their music as a way to process and express themselves. It's so funny. Either you had the thought and it entered my mind or vice versa, because at the same exact time, I was like, what about her music? I'm going to mention that if she doesn't mention it.
Yes, it's good. It's sometimes I just need a bit more time to think, I guess, about when there's a hard question.
I think I thought about this a little bit more ahead of time. So
yeah.
I think it would have been hard for me. I would have had to think for a minute. What were the strengths that I had as a highly sensitive child?
Yes.
Because we're so used to that message that it's not a good thing. So it takes a minute to think about, like, wait a second, if I flip this, was there a positive?
I hope I don't scare off our listeners. I think it's just looking at the environment that I grew up in. Just to give a bit of backstory, I grew up in East Germany, and back then, of course, the wall had already fallen down. So I was not growing up in the worst East Germany that was closed off from everything. But of course, when I went to school, there were still teachers teaching that were also teaching during the time when the wall was up. And the teacher that I had was just a very, very strict person, not really HSP friendly. And so it was all about just being really good at school and getting only straight A's, and that for 4 years. So it was a very strict environment. And that's, I think, why I also find it really hard to see the moments where my sensitivity could flourish, because it was such a pressure-driven environment to grow up in as a child, you know? So I think, in the teenage years in Norway, when I moved to Norway, it was really good for me because I could allow my sensitivity to come out more. It's much less focused on
it's
pressure.
like your sensitivity was repressed. It's like you weren't even
The first year in Norway, my teachers were shocked at how conditioned I was from Germany to focus on being the best and focusing on only having straight A's. And I was so anxious and my entire nervous system was dysregulated. And they really helped me in Norway to get more relaxed and laid back. And I'm really happy my parents made the move to Norway because otherwise I don't know what would have happened with me, you know.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of stress and pressure, especially for a young kid. Yeah.
So,
How old were you when you moved?
I was 12 years old. I just turned 12, and then I went to school in Norway, and it was such a difference from Germany. Much more laid back and more focused indeed on other things than only mathematics or English or all the good subjects in school, but also focused on arts and sports and swimming and being outdoors, learning about home and how to cook. And it was much more of a safe space, you know, to grow up. So I think for me, that was a really good thing to grow up there and have my teenage years there. But I think that's why maybe I had a different experience, because I moved abroad when I was a teenager. So
I mean, very different experiences. And I think that when you said earlier that you hope we don't scare off our listeners, I think there's probably a lot of people out there that can resonate and relate to feeling like their sensitivity was just stifled or buried, and having that tough experience.
But I hope that I also can inspire our listeners who do have the same experience, that it is possible to change that for the better, because now I don't feel like that at all. I've really stepped into my strength as an adult. I'm 32 years old now, and I really feel that I've embraced my highly sensitive trait. So it is possible to still turn that around, you know, and see it as a strength and embrace all the strengths that you have as a highly sensitive person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure now, not that it's good to have really stressful experiences when you're young, but I think that those of us that work through them and are able to grow and move on to better things and better times, I think that it kind of gives you a perspective of, like, I'm sure your experience in Norway, you felt so grateful for because of the experience you had prior, you know?
Exactly.
So,
it was really a reset for me. And people might wonder, why did you move away? But that's a different topic for another podcast. I really am curious to hear about the experiences of our listeners in their teenage years and in their child years. Maybe after listening to this podcast, you can share some of your experiences, and let's just inspire each other with our stories.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you so much for listening in. We talked a little bit about the nervous system in this podcast. So if you're really into that topic, make sure to tune into the next episode, because there we're going to be talking about how we calm down our nervous system in times of stress.
Sounds good. Join us for the next one. Ready?
All right. Yes.
High five.
Thank you for tuning in. Would you like us to talk about a specific topic in our podcast? Make sure to comment, and we'll keep it in mind for the future.
And if you enjoy what we're doing here, we'd love for you to like and share this episode so that our podcast reaches other HSPs who can enjoy it as well.
While you're already here, don't forget to check out our additional resources for HSPs and empaths.
Anne-Kathrin has her own blog site and has created an online membership for HSPs and empaths with featured experts on relevant personal growth topics every month.
And Tiara has her own YouTube channel and has also built a step-by-step online program for HSPs on the journey to thriving in their health, relationships, and career.
All of our links are in the description. See you on the next episode.
Weather, sorry. Okay.
Why don't you try it again? And if you don't like it, then I can try one.
Okay. Okay. Oh gosh, now I have like this stress.